Hello, friends. Something about the Lisanne and Froon case and Kris Kremers case that we need to make sure that we remember is those day one phone calls. Kris's iPhone had an emergency phone call at 4:30 p.m. on April 1st. Lisanne Froon's Samsung, she had her phone made an emergency phone call at 4:51 p.m. on April 1st. So about 21 minutes difference between their two emergency phone calls. Now I bring this up because I say that if something happened to them, it happened before that 4:30. Now, some people believe they fell into a ravine. Some people believe that one of their feet, got broken or ankle sprained or a snake or a spider bite, even though that statistically probably didn't happen. Anyway, my point is it had to happen before 4:30 because that's when the emergency phone call. And after 4:51, we don't have an emergency phone call on the first day. And what's strange is actually the lack of emergency phone calls over the whole period. I mean, really, the cell phone usage points to me that they really weren't in possession of their phones. But anyway, if you think that it was an accident and something happened, well, the big red flag is right there. 4:30 is when it happened. Now, this is the point, is that the search parties began on day 3. Now, if either Kris or Lisanne or both of them were so wounded, they were so hurt that they couldn't get back to town on day 1, they would not have been able to walk through past the search area. And that's what we need to keep in mind is those phone calls in correlation with when the search parties happen. The searches started on day 3. Now, yes, on day 3 were they the best searches in the world? Well, no, but they did search the trail, and don't you think that you know they would search the dangerous spots where someone might have fell? I mean, that's kind of common sense. I mean, day 3, day 4, day 5, and then when the Dutch came in day 7, you can be sure that the ravines where they possibly could have fallen, they were all searched. Friends, 4:30 on day 1. Keep that in mind because if there was an accident, it happened then. And my contention is that they would not have been able to walk past what the Panama search party did on day 3 if they had an accident day 1 before 4:30. And we had this mindset, well, they couldn't make it back to town because they were hurt. Well, if they couldn't make it back to town because they were hurt, neither could they walk past the search parties. These search parties, they searched the trails and they had they had helicopters. I'm not saying it was the best search in the world, but you don't need to have the best search in the world. If they were hurt on day 1, they would not have made it that far. So people saying that they couldn't make it back to the town because they were hurt, well, by that same logic, you can't have it both ways, and you can't say whether they walked past the possible search place. And friends, if Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, if they fell into a ravine on day 1, do you think they just would have had 2 emergency phone calls on that day? Do you think it would have been 4:30, then 4:50, 4:30, 4:51, and then that's it? I mean, Google their phone records, and it's so amazing how few emergency phone calls are actually made within the first 7 days. I mean, it's really crazy to me that they would have been bit by a snake that you didn't recognize or bit by a spider that you didn't recognize. I mean, you would have kept on calling an emergency phone number. Now, some people will say, well, battery life, your cell phone battery life. There was still battery life on that iPhone. When they started the iPhone, there was like 49% battery life. Well, the last time it was shut down, there was like 20% battery life. There was plenty of battery life on that cell phone, so that's not really a good idea. Friends, I think that they were in possession of their cell phones, and I think that April 1st at 4:30, that shows us. That shows us either Kris and Lisanne, they were calling for help because something bad was happening, or else someone had their phones by that time. But I think we need to keep in mind 4:30. That's the key time frame. 4:30 on April 1st. And as I said, if you want to maintain that Kris and Lisanne would not have been found by the search party, wouldn't have been found by the guides, the sniffer dogs. If you want to maintain that, then you had to believe that they really traveled way past the search area. And they wouldn't have been able to do that with a broken foot. They wouldn't have done that if they were trapped in a ravine. So anyway, friends, I think that's something we need to keep in mind. Very important, those phone calls. And I think what's even more important are the lack of phone calls. And I have a whole video about that already, so I don't want to go into that. But anyway, just keep in mind that if something happened to them on April 1st, they're not going to make it very far. And if they're unable to make it back to town, why in the world would we think that they would be able to make it past what was ever searched? So friends, thank you for listening. I hope I made some sense. I know sometimes I don't. I hope I did today. Okay, take care.